you've talked in the past about having anxiety and depression and how some of those feelings have fueled your songwriting. Is that something that you started to feel at an early age as a songwriter?
Yes, I struggled with anxiety and depression my entire life. I was very fortunate, though, to be in a family where talking about your feelings was encouraged, where seeing therapy was encouraged. There was a really positive environment in my household around a conversation about mental illness, and that helped me never really feel that discomfort in writing about it. It was really natural for me to write and speak about my experiences with anxiety and depression, and I didn't realize until later in life that that's something that not a lot of people were fortunate enough to have growing up. There's obviously a real stigma around mental health in this country.
Once a year, in the New England countryside between the dates of November 1st and December 15th, a quietness washes over the senescent towns, forests, and locals. Phenomenon wouldn't be the best way to describe it. A drawn-out decay of the dead leaves and gray still of the clouds. The beauty of winter has yet to arrive, with no white shimmer to blanket the landscape. And the vibrant colors of fall have long left their home among the maple trees. It's a time where people find themselves inside, as alone with their thoughts as the thoughts themselves. And although you won't find its solitude on a postcard, its name has become a cornerstone in the folk music industry over the last year. To outsiders, we think of the dead atmosphere as the inevitable build-up to Christmas time. But to the locals, it's much simpler than that. It's stick season. In the dead of winter, in the small border town of Stratford, Vermont, Noah Kahan was born on January 1st, 1997. At the time, there were just over 1,000 people living in the town, with the median age of individuals falling at 41 years old and the average income just over $46,000 a year. It's a quiet place, its most popular landmark being one of the oldest churches in the country. It isn't a town worth much mentioning, and this is where Kahan called home. Kahan lived in a childhood many of us could relate to, growing up in the early 2000s and filling his time with YouTube, dreams of songwriting, and crashing cars as a hotel valet. He would upload his first published songs in high school at age 17, working with a school friend music producer and catching a glimpse of attention online. One of these glimpses came from songwriter Dan Wilson, who has worked with musicians such as Adele, Scott Harris, and Carrie Underwood, to name a few. In a decision that would change his path forever, Kahan deferred his admission to Tulane University to pursue his passion for songwriting and develop his musical career. In 2016, he signed with Republic Records and released his first single in 2017. And over 5 years later, Kahan would change my life forever.
Is there a subject, or was there a moment while he was writing where he kind of felt like, maybe I'm saying a little too much, like,
Yeah.
maybe I should pull back, maybe I should keep some things out?
Yeah, I do have that feeling a lot. I feel like a lot of times writing for me is such like an emotional release that like sometimes I write things down. I'm like, I just need to talk about this thing on my mind. I'm not thinking about, whether it's going to be on Spotify or whether I have to send it to anybody. And eventually I finish it. I'm like, man, that really made me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, I would hear a song by an artist. When I was younger, it was the Counting Crows, and sometimes it's Phoebe Bridgers or Sam Fender, and I hear them sing something, and I'm like, man, that's exactly how I felt, and now I feel better about it. So when I'm feeling like uncomfortable about writing something down or sharing too much or being vulnerable, I remember how I felt when I heard another artist do that for me, and so I try to remember that it's worth being a little uncomfortable if it can make someone feel less alone.
What does it mean to be vulnerable? It's an action that all of us have taken at some point in our lives. Sometimes it's the turning point of a relationship, Other times, it's a leap of faith. But whether or not your judgment was successful, it was always going to be a risk. As professor author Brené Brown puts it, being vulnerable serves as a way to foster authenticity, belongingness, and love. And it's these three words that find themselves being used so much more in our present day, words that each of us have different definitions for. You scroll through Instagram and you'll see a post of someone posting their first art creation. You spiral down a YouTube rabbit hole and discover a creator that has just tried to create their own community. And when you queue up your favorite playlist, a song will inevitably begin playing that was a musician's therapy session. In other words, your life, your emotions, your memories, they are all judged by the fostering of these three words, and end up creating a sense of vulnerability. When Noah Kahan released this song, it was no different to me than the hundreds of other songs I had heard on the radio. It fell into a sea of endless music, and I won't pretend that his sound caught my attention immediately. I was too focused on high school, Fortnite, and... Okay, well, that was about it. Which probably makes you wonder why I brought this song up in the first place. When you listen to this song compared to his more recent endeavors, the immediate thing that stands out is the pop orientation. This is not a folk music piece as much as it's a pop song with a catchy melody and easy to digest groove. I love pop music just as much as anyone else, but this does explain why I never latched onto this song as much. Pop music has always been a controversial topic, a genre that seems to find itself constantly being debated on whether or not it's authentic. It's hard to determine when a song can be dubbed as authentic, especially since that is such a subjective term. But nonetheless, we all, including myself, end up debating this hot topic. Quote, "Yet no matter how we feel about the behind the scenes of yesterday's or today's music industry, we all know a good song from a bad song. A song that means something from a song that means nothing." Noah Kahan's Hurt Somebody means something.
I didn't know what was going to happen, but it blew up and it got really big and it became a triple platinum hit in Australia, which is a very far away place. So this song indirectly got me addicted to ambient. I'm very grateful for it. It's changed my life. It's called Hurt Somebody.
In one of the first singles he ever released, Noah Kahan immediately tackles what would end up becoming his niche as a creator, a lyrical and musical expression of vulnerability. Each line weaves together a story of hesitation, where with each new verse, Kahan is reflecting on why he keeps making mistakes and trying to end a relationship. His sense of vulnerability is being questioned immediately, an introspective reasoning that all of us are familiar with. Quote, "Nobody told me it's harder than I thought to tell the truth. It's gonna leave you in pieces, all alone with your demons. And I know that we need this, but I've been too afraid to follow through." From the very beginning, Kahan is opening up about his own relationship struggles, a time of life that all of us can likely point to where we experienced a dramatic change. What makes this song and Kahan end up being unique, however, is the deliberate word choice used throughout. Quote, "You'll feel the stinging and you'll think of me, 'cause it hurts when you hurt." This line plays off what he has been saying the entire song, yet is more vulnerable in its composition than what would typically be used in the genre. Another shockingly vulnerable pop song that was released in 2017 was Portugal the Man's sensation, Feel It Still. The song tells the story of the lead singer's balance of their career with their daughter, a complex relationship of how much someone should sacrifice for their loved ones. It has an interesting message and a ridiculously catchy beat. It makes sense why it was one of the most popular songs of the year. But when you put it side by side Noah Kahan's pop song, they are completely different, yet both handle vulnerable topics. The biggest difference between the two, and our answer for why Noah Kahan is so unique, is that one song tells an intricate story while the other repeats its chorus over 10 times. Noah Kahan isn't unique for conveying sensitive and personal subjects in his songs. He's unique because of his dedication to clarity, his dedication to lyricism, his dedication to himself, and thus his authenticity. Our next stop is a jump in time, from the simple days of 2017 to the hurricane of confusion in 2020. On May 1st of the year, when it felt like time stopped, Noah Kahan would release the album Cape Elizabeth. A town much like his home, Cape Elizabeth lies quietly along the coast of Maine, its lighthouses reflecting an aura of stillness as clouds drift across the Atlantic. The music reflects this, with 5 songs showing another level of intimacy with the folk culture of the East Coast. But what these lyrics emphasize isn't as much the location itself nor the atmosphere, but instead our next aspect of vulnerability, a sense of belonging. The song, Anyway, is about a promise of acceptance, support, and home. A light guitar melody falls like snow, each note subtly implying a sense of cold, while Kahan's voice provides the warmth, our sense of belonging. Honey, don't worry. Nobody is angry at any of this. Darling, be patient. Stare into the vacancy. Take a deep breath. As the song progresses, we are given more context as to who exactly Kahan is singing to. Details bleed into the lines of substance abuse and emotional negligence. Today, you looked older than me. Hair in your face, it fills the space between your teeth. And all your falling, does it get exhausting? You said you were sorry that you hadn't called me in over a week. His lyrics paint an emotion as rich and blue as the album cover that symbolizes his song, every piece of the story creating an atmosphere of belongingness. And although it would be one thing if Kahan simply gave a perspective of a caretaker, his emphasis of this person not being well identifies an aspect of belongingness that is much more powerful. When I was growing up, I always had a sense that I belonged. I felt like I had good friends, good parents, and support from everyone around me. And as I get older, I hold these relationships even closer, never forgetting just how lucky I am to have them. But also as I was growing up, I knew friends and family who didn't have that sense of belonging. If you feel like your belonging's on trial, and you're wondering if this is a place where you're regarded favorably, mental energy is taken away from learning, focusing, and growing. That quote comes from a psychologist and professor, Geoffrey Cohen, a faculty member at Stanford that has dedicated his studies to creating inclusive spaces for people from all walks of life. His quote touches on something that directly relates to Kahan's song Anyway, the importance of offering belonging, not just feeling it. I hope I ain't the last of what the world left you, a coat, something you only wear in cold weather. These lines juxtapose the warm timbre of Kahan's voice, showing us the cold and vulnerability of being alone. It's utterly conscious, yet subconscious at the same time. Kahan choosing his lyrics precisely, while as an audience we can do nothing but experience. I find it no coincidence that these were the lines he chose to repeat the most, a slow chant expressing the longing for his darling to be better. And from this, we find ourselves in the last aspect of vulnerability, the most powerful emotion that ties it all together. The feeling of falling in love is something that has had a chokehold on humanity since its ability to create art. I've listened to thousands of songs, read hundreds of poems, and seen tens of movies revolving around that one word. And yet, Noah Kahan has somehow captured an aspect of love I have never heard before. Released in 2021 in the finale of his introspective album I Was, I Am, the song Howling has never left my mind since I first heard it. It seems to be doing so many things at once, showing off Kahan's voice, painting a watercolor canvas of self-doubt, and creating a vulnerable acoustic sound with the only instruments involved being his voice and guitar. The duet they perform together and its transparent texture is truly something special, a formula that musicians have used in the past for one main purpose: to get your attention.
What have you learned, I guess, just about your process as an artist, as a songwriter, that's, I guess, evolved over the last few albums up until this point?
Yeah, I think I've learned that I don't have to be like aiming for universal relatability at the expense of my own experience. Like,
That's so good.
As always, Kahan's lyrics tell us to sit down and listen to his story, and he does this by going against a common trope in love songs. We've all heard some form of the phrase, "Let's pretend we've never met so we can fall in love all over again." It's sweet and easy to digest, a hopeful romantic look on relationships. But as Kahan's lyrics read to start this song, where to begin? Oh, let's pretend we never met so I can disappear for a moment. This contrast is our first clue as to how this song isn't going to be about the aspect of love we have heard so many times again, nor is it even going to be its opposite in falling out of love. Instead, Kahan pushes a subtle message of transitory love, a type of love that is not permanent but is ebbing and flowing throughout him, even throughout the progression of the song. In the song's chorus, he shows this flow and thus contradiction perfectly. Is there something keeping me here for the minute, darling? Did you find the key, and what is the meaning of it? 'Cause honey, sometimes I feel this emptiness howling out. This use of the chorus emphasizes Kahan's point, a feeling of love that is tarnished by its recipient's identity. But who is the recipient? Zip codes, in their most basic format, consist of 5 numbers. Introduced on July 1st, 1963, they were created to aid the U.S. Postal Service in efficiently delivering mail to specific locations and zonings. The first digit of this code was given to corresponding states moving from east to west. Vermont, being close to the East Coast, was thus given the first digit of 0. It may seem bizarre that I have brought this up, but for those of you who have listened to this song before, you know where I'm going with this. In the bridge section, the oddly specific line is repeated, deep blue, 05072. The words deep blue seem odd, but relate to the other ocean-themed lyrics in the song. I've been trying to swim with both my hands behind my back. My dear, I always feared the ocean. The 5 digits Kahan provided are the same 5 digits of Stratford, Vermont's zip code. This song isn't about a long-lost partner, but instead a town that calls out to Kahan, begging him to come home, even if he may not want to. And he decides to do it. In fall of 2022, I can tell you the exact walk I had to do, every single day. It was right through the middle of campus, under the huge pine trees and dead leaves. The wind whistled through a tunnel I constantly had to walk under, and the sound of distant train horns echoed across the dry concrete. But on October 14th, the sound of train horns and wind was replaced with 14 songs. 14 songs that told me stories of inherited darkness, houses that look like they're crying, and faces in the crows. And as each song passed, it drove me closer to a destination I did not expect. I missed Stratford, Vermont. The entirety of Styx season deserves to be listened to in order, a story that beckons for a listener just as the Styx plead for a resting place. Its motifs of homesickness, dead love, and substance abuse revolve around a vulnerable discussion, one where Noah Kahan calls out to his home. And from 14 songs that have become some of the best I've ever heard, 3 reflect our pillars of vulnerability. 3 songs that define authenticity, belongingness, and love better than any dictionary ever could. Songs that built themselves off of years of beautiful lyricism, melodic mastery, and transparent pain.
I think coming back home has kind of realigned me with who I was before instead of this person I was trying to be out there.
So being true to yourself has enabled you to reach people in a way that you may never have been able to if you'd gone to Nashville or LA.
Yeah, no, it's funny, like the place that you feel like you were moving backwards is actually the place that sent me forward.
You had to go backwards to go forward in a way.
I think like you have to take stock of where you come from and who you are and why that place made you who you are in order to understand yourself.
It's a song of reflection, loss, and learning to forgive the self. Orange Juice tells a story that is unbearably sad and yet impossible to look away from. But instead of telling you deliberately, it is through extensive listening and personal reflection when you can uncover its hidden story. It begins with a bottle of orange juice sitting peacefully in a kitchen. Its dual purpose is a distraction, avoiding temptation and encouraging sobriety to a loved one. This loved one tells us why they left. My heart has changed and my soul has changed and my heart, my face has changed and I haven't drank in 6 months on the dot. And as this is heard, Kahan gives us the context we've so desperately been needing. See the graves as you pass through from our crash back in '02. Not one nick on your finger, you just asked me to hold you. But it made you a stranger and filled you with anger. Now I'm third in the lineup to your Lord and your Savior. It's just a couple of lines surrounded by a hurricane of darkness, an incredibly metaphorical and accurate portrayal of blame and self-hatred. Kahan's message is trying to encourage self-forgiveness, while his recipient pushes against the thought of moving on. You said the world has changed. Don't you find it strange that you just went ahead and carried on? These emotions are ones that are incredibly accessible to Kahan's audience, emotions that we have all at some point in our lives felt. And as if he were welcoming us into his own home, Kahan brings together so many people with this song, using vulnerability to attract vulnerability. And through a powerful use of the bridge section in the piece, he says,
everywhere, but now it's official. We are in a recession. The research group that makes that determination made it today and said the recession actually started a year ago. But the question now, when will it end? Wall Street is clearly worried. The Dow plunged nearly 680 points today, or 7.7%.
In December of 2007, the effects of the US housing market bubble bursting were starting to be felt worldwide. It wouldn't take long before unemployment rates rose, mortgage payments were defaulted, and millions of people would financially suffer. But in the middle of all of this, 7-year-old me was too focused on Little League Baseball and Phineas and Ferb to care. I never really knew how my family was affected, nor did I know how my friends' families were affected either. And as time went on and life moved forward, I haven't thought much of it besides economics classes. But to an older Noah Kahan, he has a much different story to tell. The song Come Over speaks to a number of different motifs, each being metaphorically addressed with financial terms. It's one of the most clever songs on the Stick Season album, and all the more transparent. I'm in the business of losing your interest, and I turn a profit each time that we speak. Don't you know there's a coffin buried under the garden? It was there when we got here, will be there when we leave. Each word is just as important as the last, with the mysterious coffin being mentioned in passing and an emotion of loneliness is felt. And my house was designed to kind of look like it's crying. The eyes are the windows, the garage is the mouth. So when they mention the sad kid and the sad house on Balk Street, you won't have to guess who they're speaking about. Come over, come over. It's these lines that have imprinted themselves into my memory. You can feel his pain in every syllable, his desperation in every phrase. Sometimes the making of friends can seem almost impossible, especially when we are younger. As Kahan struggled with this during the early recession, I struggled with it in the later, moving states in 2010. I was very fortunate to meet some people that spring, but I'll never forget that first day of school. I had just seen the first major snowfall of my life, and my socks were still soggy from the walk-in. I remember my second grade teacher introducing me to a classroom of blinking eyes and unknown childhood anxiety creeping its way up my spine. And there I was sitting down with one kid, asking his name, and just bluntly asking if he'd like to play at recess within the first 15 minutes of me being at the school. I was so terrified of what he would say. To this day, we are still friends and catch up from time to time. Many of those kids I see on my Instagram feed, and the rest have become lost memories since then. But it was that anxious feeling of first reaching out to someone that Kahan captures so well with his lyrics. In this video, I just gave you a childhood experience of mine in a couple sentences. However, when Kahan uses a similar story and puts it over a soft melody, the impact is much greater. I can't think of a better way to describe the power of music. As the song progresses, it becomes more evident how this song intertwines itself with the stock market crash. But once again, just like the many songs that came before it, the bridge holds quite possibly the best lyrics in this song. I know it ain't much, I know it ain't cool, you don't have to tell the other kids at school. My dad'll strike it rich, will be the big house on the block. Someday I'm going to be somebody people want. It is in 4 sentences that Kahan describes a childhood perception of wealth so incredibly accurate that in just reading the lines you can feel their emotional value. When I was growing up, I constantly compared myself to other kids, and more specifically, their family's wealth. I saw them go on vacation more times than me or have a nicer phone than me, and it wasn't that I was ungrateful. I knew how lucky I was. I just didn't know how to process those thoughts correctly. To hear Kahan tell his story brings back those memories and that childhood desperation for belonging. But it isn't quite my favorite part of the song.
But I'm in the business of losing your interest, and I turn a profit each time that we speak. Don't you know there's a coffin buried under the garden? Was there when we got here, we'll be there when we leave.
The story concludes the same way it started, with the lines, "Don't you know there's a coffin buried under the garden? It was there when we got here. We'll be there when we leave." These two sentences hold a mysterious value that to this day, I don't know quite what they mean. Their importance is obvious, headlining and finalizing the childhood introspection, and I can't help but wonder how literal this sentence is. Was there an actual coffin under his family's garden? Could it be a metaphor for his loss of identity, both when he got there and when he left? Or is it simply never going to be understood by an audience, and did the author do this intentionally? These are the questions that convey why I love this song and Noah Kahan's other works so much. It's pure poetry. And from all this vulnerability that we've discussed, there's one song that brings it all together.
A lot of ways I was feeling very in between. I had finished writing my second album, and it was during the time of the pandemic where people were starting to tour, but I hadn't gotten on the road yet. And so I wanted to write a song about transition and change, and the colloquialism "stick season" in Vermont is such a cool term. I think it perfectly encapsulates what the area looks like in that kind of November period. And it also felt like it encapsulated something about what my life was looking like at the time.
There are too many ways to describe this song, and none of them are good enough. It was the staple song that changed Kahan's career forever, hit number 3 on the Billboard Top 200, and broke the glass ceiling to show the world that his music was connecting a generation that has been more educated on mental health than ever before. In all my time listening to music so far, I have never heard a song capture that feeling of isolation love can cause so well. Every line in this song connotes confusion, heartache, and pessimism in a way that everyone can thoughtfully interpret. It's a song that deserves your attention and deserves to be talked about even more. So, let's start from the beginning. As you promised me that I was more than all the miles combined, you must have had yourself a change of heart like halfway through the drive, because your voice trailed off exactly as you passed my exit sign, kept on driving straight, and left our future to the right. Our exposition to the story shows a relationship that has just met its end, a bitter drive-by past the town that Kahan is trapped in. And as his former love drives off into the hills of New England as he reflects, now I am stuck between my anger and the blame that I can't face, and memories something even smoking weed cannot replace. And I am terrified of weather because I see you when it rains. Doc told me to travel, but there's COVID on the plains. These following lines give us our timeline for which these events take place by mentioning COVID, all while simultaneously showing us the clouded thoughts of Kahan like those of the maples in the countryside fog. And just like his hometown's humble presence, the chorus of this song unravels layers of history and isolation. And I love Vermont, but it's the season of the sticks. And I saw your mom, she forgot that I existed. And it's half my fault, but I just like to play the victim. I'll drink alcohol till my friends come home for Christmas. He spirals further, and I'll dream each night of some version of you that I might not have, but I did not lose. Now your tire tracks in one pair of shoes and I'm split in half, but that'll have to do. To me, the lyric, might not have but did not lose, stands out as one of the best hidden lines in this entire song. It's repeated over and over in the chorus, and yet its meaning isn't completely felt until you read it word by word. Its contradiction of itself perfectly encapsulates what it means to be in a dying relationship. The last pieces of fake love fading away.
Talked openly about like dealing with anxiety and depression, and I think that even is something that a lot of people can identify with, whether it's due to the weather or whether it's due to life or whatever. And I want to know a little bit about how you're able to work through that when you're like on the road and there's a ton going on.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's like a constant kind of like process of like checking in on yourself and being honest with yourself, which can be hard to do. You know, you have this like feedback loop on tour where like every night you have people that are cheering for you, and then you like are like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to feel about myself. And then the next morning or whatever, you're in like a dusty venue and you're like, I feel like shit, but like everyone thinks I'm doing so well. So like, am I doing well, or am I like letting people decide how I feel? So you have to really evaluate how you're actually feeling. And I go to therapy, and I have my dog on tour, which is super helpful for me, my emotional health.
I bet.
And just trying to, the people in my touring party are like, they know me really well, and like having people that support me is really important, and having like supportive people around. So just kind of constantly trying to check in, but it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure.
As we come to notice throughout all of Noah Kahan's music, mental health is the center of everything. It was what started his career in the first place with Hurt Somebody, and has since created a foundation of dominating the American folk music genre. But no matter how much I analyze his lyrics, vulnerability, and intricate melodies, it would be nothing without what his parents have accomplished. We are living through an evolution of mental health perception, one that has become more widespread and accessible than ever before. As Boston Magazine put it best in its title, Noah Kahan is the voice of an emotionally evolved generation. As much as I want to give our generation all the credit, however, that just isn't fair. She and my dad always allowed me to talk openly about what I was feeling and my mental health. We spoke a lot about their mental health being passed down to us. And that is how it is, right? You get a lot of stuff from your parents, and mine were always very open about it. Through this pass down of beliefs, Noah Kahan's parents raised a son that wasn't afraid to show vulnerability, and thus brought together millions of people. It gives me hope for the future as the ball has been set in motion when someday our generation passes down beliefs to the next, where mental health and vulnerability become a focal point. So I thought that if I piled something good on all my bad, that I could cancel out the darkness I inherited from Dad. No, I am no longer funny, 'cause I miss the way you laugh. You once called me forever, now you still can't call me back. It's the first verse after the chorus and rings true why Noah Kahan is a special musician. We get a look into his private life with his parents, a callback to his self-depriving love, and a line that perfectly balances cheesy breakup song with unparalleled authenticity. And it's the last line of the song that ties everything together, one that isn't just repeated in the chorus, but serves as a symbol for the rest of the album. A longing for a town that has given him some of the best and worst memories of his life. Now, your tire tracks and one pair of shoes, and I'm split in half. But that'll have to do. And it is after reading this last line that I wonder, is he talking about a lover or his home? I think about that walk quite often. It was always cold, always covered in dead leaves, and sometimes was the only chance I got to be outside when the sun was still up. My mind would float from being late to class to just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and on the days my headphones would die, the silence felt miserable to me, just shuffling feet among thousands of other college students. But after October 14th, my ears and my mind from that point on were always lost in the melodies of Stick Season. Everywhere, Everything, New Perspective, All My Love, Homesick, Growing Sideways, and so many others gave me an escape from the mid-semester anxiety. At points, I found myself sad because I didn't think he could ever achieve something this grand ever again. The age-old question of trying to recreate perfection. But on June 9th, 2023, he not only recreated perfection, but made it arguably even better. The We'll All Be Here Forever expansion of Stick Season showed me that Noah Kahan isn't going to be slowing down anytime soon, and it's worth your time to listen to if you haven't yet. And whatever he may do in the future, I know that it will be built upon the pillars of vulnerability, authenticity, belongingness, and love.
So I found Noah Kahan through the creator of this video, and his lyrics and his songs really didn't resonate with me at first, but upon the second and third, and fourth and 16th listen, I really found that his music gave life to emotions that I never really realized could speak before.
So there's so much to say about Noah Kahan, but the main story I want to tell is when Stick Season, the deluxe version, Will All Be Here Forever came out. I remember going through the songs, all of them are amazing, and I listened to Call Your Mom, and at the time I was going through a really rough mental health spot, and so listening to that song, like, it really got to me, really deep. And I remember after listening to that song on the same day, my two best friends and my sister all sent me Call Your Mom and said, this made me think of you. And like, just the fact that they could use one of his songs to connect with me and tell me that they were there for me meant so much.
So I think Noah Kahan has been in every single playlist I've ever made since I was 14, when I first heard him while driving up to Walden, Colorado with my childhood best friend and her family. But I remember that first line of the song, Youngblood, that said, "Oh dear, I'm sorry that you grew up so soon." And at that moment, coping with my own life and grieving an adolescence I thought I had, Noah managed to put my feelings into words and also attach beautiful music to it. But from there, I discovered more of his music, and I just began to understand more of my own feelings and my own emotions as he continued to put into words what I struggled for years to describe. So to say that Noah's music affects me deeply, or I feel it in my heart or my soul or something cheesy like that, would totally be an underrepresentation of what his music means.
And I really, really enjoyed that feeling and getting to feel these things that were indescribable before.
And like, that's why Noah Kahan means so much, is that he makes such a difference and he really connects people together in a way that otherwise they might not be able to.
Today, especially, I feel so supported, understood, and probably overall validated through my healing when I hear lyrics like, "I'm terrified, I might never have met me. I worry for the sun, I worry for the snow, I worry I'll die young, I worry I'll grow old." And lyrics like, "I'd move back home forever, I'd feed the dogs, and I'd put all my pieces back together where they belong, and I'd say I'm a mess."
But as he works away on writing more poetry, providing therapy and melodies, and defining modern folk music, I'll be thinking about that small town in Vermont. I'll be thinking about the sparsely populated residents watching the seasonal November fog quietly blanket the trees and the distance. I'll be thinking about the bitter cold and the soft blue sky, the crows' silhouettes protruding from the sun. I'll be thinking of the coffin buried under the garden, the orange juice lying in the kitchen, and I'll be thinking of the postcards only taken in the summer. And while the stories fill my ears and the leaves fall from their homes, I'm going to embrace this walk of mine. Because it's the season of the sticks. Thank you all so much for watching. Before this video ends, I have a fun announcement to make. If you are interested in more content from me, I just released a full breakdown of the Stick Season album for my monthly supporters on KoFi. There you'll find a more in-depth dive at the entire album, plans for the future, and some other behind-the-scenes content. With that being said though, a special thank you goes out to my supporters on KoFi for allowing me to keep chasing after my dream. Their names are on screen now, and if you would like to join them and be featured at the end of every video, you can find a link in the description. Along with that, you can find links to my sources and the wonderful music featured in the video. Without all of these people, these videos wouldn't be possible. Thank you all again so much, and I'll see you again soon.